2, 1.
Hi, how's it going?
Hey, we are good. Yeah, so.
All right. So before we get started, what is your passion project?
My passion project is on active learning for ADHD students.
Perfect. Okay.
So being able to, and this is aiming more towards like high schoolers, for them to be able to speak for themselves and be able to be like, hey, this is what my educational needs are, and all that. So I myself have ADHD, so it's something that's personal to me, and I'm passionate about like disability rights, making sure everybody gets their rights being met and everything. Because unfortunately in schools it's not happening. So
I get it 100%. Okay, so
and what is yours?
Oh, that's right. So mine is ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences, and it's healing the whole community in order to heal our children.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still I tweak my stuff every week, like my whatever you want to call it, slide forward, my passion, whatever. Well, that's the gist of it. So ancestral trauma, mother trauma, and being able to create safe spaces for our kiddos. But we'll get into that, so that way you have something to write about. Okay.
Yeah, dope. So first question. Identity. How has the habit you have been studying during this module played out in your life prior to now? And what is most evident or least evident?
And so the habit was win or lose, win or win-lose.
Win-lose, yeah.
So how do you think your passion project with identity and the topic kind of all correlate?
Well, for right now, I'm kind of dealing with some executive dysfunctions that is due to because of my ADHD. So trying to work through my working through that and being able to create a cohesive environment to do so. It's been hard to create a win-win.
Okay, do you feel so do you feel maybe encompassing the reading and the habit, maybe explaining to educators or whatever group you wanted to, hey, this is how kids work, and when they're having a spiral moment or just a moment of they just need redirection. Does that make sense? Maybe something that they could, and creating that habitual, that goes into number 2, habitual habits. Okay, this is what it is. We know what it is. So let's have them stand up and do 10 jumping jacks, and then regroup.
Yeah, that's I'll keep that in mind though, because actually right now, for example, I'm standing.
Right.
I'm on a high table, but I'm standing because I'm tired of sitting. So
right. No, I get it. I get it. I worked in ASD for a long time in special ed, and that was my favorite. I work with nonverbals, and I did speech, and that was one of my favorite things, was just recognizing and meltdown 3, 2, let's go do something. So we play tag in the hallway.
Yeah.
Not the best. People used to get angry, but 5 minutes is all they need. They run around, they're good.
Yeah.
Okay, so how the whole topic relates to ACEs and trauma, I would say just creating a habit in children that's healthy, where they can say, hey, that's a boundary. I don't want to hug grandma. This is my body, which I know is hard for some people to hear. But again, it's creating that habit of self-awareness in kids, so that the ones that have trauma can really say and have a say, hey, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And would you also include prevention of with teaching kids autonomy? If they recognize, hey, this touch is not appropriate or whatever, hey,
yep,
before it progresses.
Absolutely. So number 2 is habitual. What are the benefits of being habitual with this habit, and how consistent are you with this habit, and what factors play into this in a win-win, win-to-lose passion project scenario?
So in my case, let's see what I wrote down. Just finding practical applications to everything that I'm researching on, everything that speaking to different people and just being able to find ways of, hmm, sorry, I fell off the rabbit trail. Um, um, Basically being able to find practical solutions and finding good habits that kids can do every day with learning that they could um, utilize in their own personal life. So part of like with my blog and my passion project is creating sort of like a library of like resources, of different resources that they could utilize, like different laws that pertain to um, spe- um, special education, or here's different study methods or different study or good habits to pick up, or
Good.
so just being able to find practical
Right. Study
application.
habits. I mean, that's a good one to apply, right? Because if they create a good study habit early in life and they have ADHD, they should be able to recognize like self-awareness as they get older, like, hey, I need to take a 5-minute break. Because
Yeah.
now what I'm reading, it's like squirrel, chipmunk. Because like that's how I operate sometimes.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Like
Same
I've read
here.
the same page for 20 minutes and nothing's working.
Yeah.
Okay, so relating to ACEs and trauma, again, just creating that healthy habit. Like, where maybe you journal for 5 minutes in the morning, or maybe when you start to feel dysregulated and your heart is beating faster and your palms are sweaty, having that self-awareness to be like, something's triggering me. What is it? And let me remove myself from that situation. And that's a habit. Like that's a learned thing you have to learn. It's
And
not
just
easy.
yeah, and being able to find ways of coping with the triggers in a way that's not destructive, you would say.
Absolutely. Okay, so then it says for envisioning, so it says the question to jump to the article, think win-win. And so the article, let me open this article. I'm sorry, I should have had it open.
Now you're
So the article, the abstract says the recent endorsement of the advocacy competencies of American Counseling Association signals their relevance to the school counseling profession. This article outlines the importance of being a social change agent and the value of advocacy in K through 12 schools, and how school counselors can use the advocacy competencies as a framework for promoting access and equity for all students. Implications for professional school counselors and school counselors, educators, and using the advocacy competencies. Okay, so creating a win-win with ADHD. What do you think in grades K through 12 will be the most relevant educators where across the board they can all agree that, hey, this is a pretty good idea, let's implement this in schools?
I would just say like applying, because unfortunately every kid with ADHD has some slight differences, but just being able to utilize their overall strengths and deficits and making it work for them. So like making sure that everybody's like all the different groups that get together are on the same page.
Okay.
So like my big area with like is active learning. So being able to find practical, hands-on, concrete ways of being able to learn about something. So like if they're learning biology, like I don't know, like they're learning about plants, instead of just reading a book about plants, I'm like, let's go outside and learn about plants. Or learning about kinetic energy, in physics, instead of just reading about that, they can like make like a roller coaster and observe um how like the cart goes up and how it builds up momentum and then goes down. So finding a practical use, because I don't know about others, but for me, it's like if I'm reading something, I need some sort of practical application to it, because otherwise I will see it as pointless. And I think a lot of us feel that way in general. Like, what is the point of learning XYZ subject? So I'm really pushing.
I agree with you.
Yeah, because that's what I'm really pushing for, especially with my passion project, is expanding from just the typical norm of.
Okay, that makes sense, totally. I would say the same thing for ACEs and community building is just kind of being able to reach parents and create maybe the schools or the community create something so parents can also learn how to handle their traumas and be able to be better parents, especially in places that like low economic statuses, right? Like you want to be able to create not a think tank per se, but a safe area where adults feel passionate and then they can talk to other adults and educators and work with like helping their kids, you know, like not repeating their mistakes and not doing all that kind of stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So how would it work for like in the event if there's like not a if there's no healthy, like say healthy parents involved?
Okay, so for example, like the district I work in is real bad. Most parents are in prison or dead or on drugs. And so like the beginning of the school year, I kind of unschooled a little bit. We still did curriculum stuff, but I brought all my students journals. I told them to decorate their journal. Everyone had a uniform journal. And I told them I would never read the journal. I said, it's your safe space. And every morning they would journal for 20 minutes while they ate breakfast. I worked in a place where free and reduced lunch is a thing. Well, I noticed like a lot of kids would get hungry and some kids wouldn't eat all their food. So in my classroom, I brought in bins and I had like places for cereal and for juice boxes and for granola. And I just said, hungry adults don't function well. Hungry kids aren't going to function well either.
Oh no.
And my test scores actually went up like 11%. Like it was weird. And people like, so I'm not a certified teacher yet. That's why I'm going to school. But in Michigan, you can be a long-term sub for the whole year. So you're still the teacher.
Yeah.
It's done. So I'm teaching fourth grade. And I mean, I had a lot of ELL kiddos and even SPED kiddos. And the SPED teachers would come up to me and they'd be like, what are you doing differently that we've never done before? And I was like, making them feel like people. And I had a little kid that would come in and I told my other partner, they would sleep. And like people would kind of get at me like, hey, why are they sleeping? And I said, if they feel safe enough to sleep here, they don't feel safe enough to sleep at home. And so like reading some of the journals, because I would read them on lunch, it was awful. I mean, some of the stuff was just unbearable. So to get with your question, I'm sorry, I'm not to go off topic, but to get by your question.
No, you're fine. No, you're fine. No, it gives me a better understanding of.
Well, so I would read their journals and find things out, right? And then kind of like, without them knowing, just kind of bring stuff up in class. Like, hey, if someone's ever hurting you at home, you know that you can talk to me or the principal because he was like really good with the kids. And he was a black male, and a lot of them don't have that role model, and he was a great role model. So I'm like, if you don't feel comfortable talking to me as a woman, talk to your principal as a man, or as your principal, or you can like write him a note. So I was big on like writing notes if they couldn't talk, and we did free jars. And so, I mean, most of the kids, after I would say it was okay, they would come up to me. Some wouldn't, like I'd have to like totally be on my course, but for the most part, I mean, a lot of them got the help they needed. And we had embedded psychologists and school counselors. And so, yeah.
It's just amazing how when they just get simple basic needs met, like food, like, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like something as simple as food and sleep. Man, once you get all that and security, once you get all that taken care of,
right,
you can actually
school. Like, I get it. It's hard too, because, you know, like I'm extremely empathetic. And so like, it was really hard for me to read some of the stuff like about the sexual abuse and not instantly want to like break somebody's knees, right? Or like look at the child and realize like their behavior is shitty because this is happening to them. So, and it was explaining a lot to my coworkers who didn't really understand like those things really happen. Yes, Karen, they do. So it was interesting. It's been an interesting year for sure. Last year was even more, but
I bet.
That's for another.
But you know, we're thankful for people like you that are.
That's interesting. All right. Okay, but I don't want to take too much of your time. Okay, the next question has to do with passion. So read your passion project statement out loud since you last read it. Do you think it needs to be tweaked, and how?
Let me see if I can remember. Let me look up my. Oh, I had my passion project. Let me pull it up. My statement. Excuse me. Where's part? Just pulling it up real quick. So basically, this is my statement. So nearly 1/3 of students with ADHD, twice the proportion of students with no psychiatric disorder, either drop out or delay high school graduation. They often do not receive the support or services needed to accommodate their educational needs, often due to not having enough resources. The effects of not receiving appropriate support that results in dropping out will cause issues with employment, housing, and legal troubles. This blog is to provide resources for students so that they can be empowered to take charge of their education. So I'm still working on it a little bit.
Okay, let me ask you something. Of that number, can you say that all those other kiddos have ADHD or something along those lines that prevents them from graduating? That's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot of students with ADHD, unfortunately, drop out because they're not getting the help and support they need. So in order for them to not drop out,
right?
They can actually learn to advocate for themselves, because eventually, as we go through life, we have to speak up for ourselves. So, and high schoolers, are very opinionated, are very, so so kind of my goal is to help them be more empowered, be like, man, I don't have to just be stuck in this situation. Like, I can actually speak up and say, hey, this is not right. I don't feel like I'm learning the way I need to. Here's some issues that I'm having. I want to be able to do better, because obviously we do not want to result in having employment issues. We don't want to have legal issues, because a lot of people with ADHD do have issues with, like, say, impulsivity,
Right.
Because a lot of people, let's say, like, who are in, like, the prison system, for example, have ADHD because of that lack of impulse control. Like, I know my impulse issues fall from, like, say, shopping. I don't realize that I spent X amount, way too much money at Michael's, and afterwards I'm like, oh yeah, I got my phone bill to pay.
Now, do you think it's more social, or do you think it's more environmental? Meaning, do you think by tweaking your environment and tweaking your diet, you can lessen the symptoms that cause ADHD? Have you ever heard about that?
I've heard of that. I've heard of some people doing that. I try to implement, like, exercise, because exercise, I know, does help.
Right.
Getting enough sleep.
Yep.
That's also a very important one. In terms of, like, can you please ask me that question again? I'm, like, blanking out.
So I just was wondering, have you ever looked into ADHD versus, like, an environmental factor versus, like,
okay, now you refresh my memory. Think of, like, when it comes to, like, the classroom, being able to advocate for different accommodations.
okay,
Like, say, having a fidget toy that helps
okay,
them. Or having an even though probably a kid is doodling, but doodling is their, let's say, way of taking notes.
right.
Like, and
I like that. I like being able to give kids, like, here's a scrap paper to doodle.
yeah,
Like, this is your own doodle.
like when I take notes, I do doodles. So, or I've read about people with ADHD. Some people, like, especially females, they'll take, like, a knitting needles to class,
right,
and they'll listen to lectures while they're like,
right.
I need to occupy my hands with something. So I have, like, I have fidget, I carry fidget toys in my bag, and if I need to, I'll take it out and I'll play with it, just to kind of because if I just sit, I cannot sit still. It's nearly impossible. So
Nope, I get it.
just being able to be like, or like being able to say like for accommodations like extended test, can I take extended test time, or can I take the test in like a different room where it's not as distracting.
Okay, no,
'Cause
that's awesome.
yeah, because I get accommodations through ASU, for example, for like extended tests and stuff.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's
Okay, so real quick, I'm gonna touch base on the passion project I told you earlier. Like it's still kind of in the works or whatever. But I guess maybe to tweak it so it's even better is what I said earlier, just helping the community help themselves and like take better care of the kids, right? So a healing, healthy community that recognizes what their trauma is, what their triggers are, and constantly works to maintain life balance will eventually teach their children and teach the community and the younger generations that they can hold boundaries, they can have those safe spaces, and they're open to communication, if that makes sense.
yeah.
But I do really like that the test taking thing. Like I think that's so important. The accommodations, just I get it. So okay, so relevancy. How am I adopting this habit strengthen your advocacy efforts? I feel like we just went over this.
Well, just I would just say like staying up to date with what's going on in like in both academic and like culturally. Um, what new research is coming out there about like how the brain functions with ADHD, or if there's like different new theories about learning coming out, like maybe another Dewey or another Montessori coming out. And like being able to share the information through social media. Something that Professor Reed suggested to me last week that I could do, because if I want to appeal to both students and like parents, I need to figure out a way to kind of grab attention to them. So we thought about making TikToks.
Okay.
Teenagers love TikToks. They're short, they're engaging. You can
Right.
watch it. You can watch it in loop. So like for like the high schoolers, create like a quick little 60-second TikTok about, hey, here's a list of accommodations you can ask for while putting in a funny trending sound that's going around, or while underneath, the TikTok, like the actual blog, be scholarly and with all my sources and all of that. So I'll have like the fun TikTok, but then still have the scholarly blog as well. So I can get the best of both worlds. And so I've been trying to make TikToks about different areas.
No, that's perfect. I like that. That's really good.
So
Makes sense.
I mean, you can probably even apply it to yours if you're aiming towards a certain demographic.
Absolutely. I mean, just constantly like posting stuff about trauma on TikTok and self-healing. I think at some point people really kind of pay attention, or at least take the minute to read it to figure out what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, yeah, same thing for relevancy, like making, I don't know necessarily TikToks, but
There's
using
Instagram.
social media. Yep.
Yeah, or Reddit, or Discord.
I don't know what those
are. Like they're just like forums.
I don't even have Facebook. Like I'm so old.
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay.
Let's see.
Application. So let's read the next one. Basically, like discuss how you're going to leverage this habit to strengthen your ability to start a movement. I mean, basically, I think you really said it. You could probably touch base on it more, but using TikTok, like what better way to send a message than through social media than what something everyone is using right now.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, and just being able to find other well-known advocacy groups that people are familiar with, like I think there's one called Attitude, but it's spelled with ADD, the tude,
Okay.
where it's like a large library of all sorts of information with concerning ADHD, from the section for students, a section for parents, teachers, doctors. I mean, it's crazy, like how massive the information is. So just utilizing that as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
Makes sense. I agree. Um, okay, so then the shared vision. How can this habit help you enlist new stakeholders or stakeholder groups to your passion project? How can this habit help you elicit specific actions from stakeholders? And how can you leverage this habit to help you start a movement, encompassing the passion project and the win-win-win-lose readings?
well, I would, I kind of want to utilize the fact that, teenagers now are more and more are getting more into like social justice and advocacy, more than ever, especially through what they're scrolling through TikTok and everything in between all the goofy stuff. Um, just being able.
I feel like for your project, like even in like starting a think tank, maybe of like other kids in high school or college, and maybe some professors, or maybe if you have any like medical professional friends, and just kind of, I don't want to say like they're not TED Talks. What do they call it? Like podcasts, maybe?
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah.
starting like some kind of like think tank where you talk once a week about the challenges, and people could call in and be like, yeah, like I'm having this challenge, or I noticed this, and like my professors don't help, or my students don't understand, or my parents never get it. And really like that would roll into starting a movement, right? Because then you could incorporate your podcast
Mhm.
to social media like TikTok, where it's like just spreading that message. Like just because someone has ADHD doesn't mean they're not smart or they can't concentrate. It just means their brain fires differently and they have to learn differently. So let's embrace that.
I like that. I might. Yeah. No. That totally makes sense. No, I like that idea. I definitely might consider that if I would want to draw people in.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Like, I mean, I don't really use social media often. I have Instagram, but I mean, I just, I watch kids in school, like everyone has phones, everyone's on social media. And I'm like, damn, but then they learn stuff, like my one teacher, she hosts like a TikTok math program. So she teaches math on TikTok.
Wow.
She does 60-second clips, and it's like basic stuff. It's like a lot of our kids like should be in like first grade math who are like in fifth grade.
Mhm.
So it's real hard for them.
Yeah.
But she has a lot of viewers and a lot of people pay attention. The kids will come to school and be like, we watched your math video to do our homework. And it's like, all right, someone's doing something right.
I mean, you do what you gotta do. You gotta like find, what kids are currently doing now. And yeah, sometimes you're gonna have to use platforms like TikTok or YouTube in order to, make your point to, you know, make your point, known.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you just gotta, yeah, it's 2022. It's not like what it used to. So, and, but I'm guess, yeah. So would you have for yours maybe consider the maybe like an after school type deal, like a club
Yeah,
type?
it would be, I would implement in the community, like, have you heard of a sip and see? But it would be like, come and like basically have coffee or tea and like hear people talk about their trauma. And like, if someone's brave enough to get up there, people will listen, and like making it more, I don't want to say like dramatization, but just this shit happens. Like, why are we hiding it? Like, let's stop hiding it like it's bad. Like, what happened is horrible, but these people need healing and like they need to get it out. Like living with that stuff and internally, like
yeah.
body, and the trauma can change your DNA over the lifespan. Like it's crazy how trauma can make you sick and lead to all sorts of health complications later in life. And like one of the big things is like sexual assault victims. are like, I don't know, like 70% likely to smoke, become morbidly obese,
Mhm.
and like die like shitty lives because they let their trauma
Yeah, because
run
I
their
know,
life.
because there's one girl in our class that her project is on sexual assault with female military.
Mm,
So, something that not a lot of people want to talk about or are scared to
no,
talk about, but, being able to bring some of these things that are normally very hush hush, to light, make a huge difference,
I know. I
and
served.
it makes these kids feel less alone because,
Oh yeah, I get it. I served in the military, and it's very accurate. I didn't at the end of my enlistment. I did 6 years. At the end of my enlistment, I didn't know one female that wasn't sexually assaulted.
mm,
So, I mean, I was not in spec war, but I was a CB in the Navy, and so like it's a construction force, so it's not a lot of women anyways.
yeah.
And I was a overhead distribution and electrician, so it was just very different.
Yeah.
But
So,
but yeah, so I appreciate you waiting for me. I'm so sorry, like
oh,
we
you're
started
fine.
to tear apart my deck and like build this pergola. It's been sitting in my front yard for like 3 weeks, and
Oh, you're good.
we
So
got
give
the
me
frame built
give me
and we
real
built the rest.
quick. Let me like turn this off real quick. So,
Okay.
all right. Thank you for meeting with me.